Generation AI, and we are on Zoom this time.
Yay!
And we have a guest. As you can see, we have Piotr. And I've met Piotr in Edinburgh Fringe Festival 2023 because we're the two of the few shows that were doing actual AI shows. Some of the shows mentioned AI, but they weren't really using any AI technology. Piotr reached out, we reached out, and we shared our work, and we tried to ask our own audience to go to their show. They asked their audience to go to our show, which was so great. So Piotr is here, and he's gonna introduce himself. Take it away.
Hello. Thank you so much, Joyce. Thank you, Natalia. I'm delighted to be here. What can I say? I'm a geek. I love robots. And I also love theater a lot. I spent 10 years living in New York. And I believe that when I'm flying home, I came back with 2 full suitcases of playbills from all the shows and musicals and operas I had seen on student tickets over 10 years of life in New York between 2003 and 2013. I just love watching people perform on stage and also being on the stage. And it's surprising because in my day job, I'm a research scientist in AI. I build, or should I say I train AI, I teach to robots. That's how I see myself. Trying to build systems that are useful for humans. And those systems can include robots, but also just algorithms that can be used for weather forecasting. Or when I was in New York, I was working on epileptic seizure prediction. So, lots of applications of AI from the time when AI was not a buzzword yet. It was not still a hashtag. It was just a form of statistics or machine learning that was slightly more advanced and involved more computation. So I was building those systems at that time when I did my PhD at NYU, New York University. And I think that about 8 years ago, I had this realization that the 2 worlds of mine, the world of performance and theater, because I'm also an improviser, I've been improvising for the past 25 years, and the world of research in AI can connect. And there is a way to make that connection.
I looked up several of your websites, I believe 3 of them, and the things that you say there, they really resonate with our mission and our thoughts on AI. And I love how you combine your passions. That's what we do as well. And also, I think this is amazing how you want to bring something new, a new tool to humans to create with, to play with and be artists with, and not replace humans. This is also something that we talk about a lot, and I feel like it's not emphasized enough when it comes to AI arts. So we actually often come across people being very cautious about AI, saying how it's going to replace humans, and it was refreshing to see someone and you and your team working in the same realm that we are. So I know that you started working with AI in 2016, which is way earlier than we started. So my first question is, how do you think this whole world of AI changed, and how did the technology progress over those, how many years? 8 years?
Yes. So I would say that the change has been incredibly dramatic. And I would also say that what happened before in 2016 was just the edge of that revolution. So I mentioned that I was doing my PhD in computer science in AI, and I graduated in 2011, and I had this idea of trying to bring an AI to improvise with on the stage. But the only thing I had heard of at the time was jazz musicians who improvise with AI instruments. So they would do a few motifs, a few riffs, and then the system would listen to, and then try to create something slightly different and respond to that. And the jazz improviser would then listen to the computer response and take it from there. And so there was this form of collaboration between the human and the machine, with the jazz performer being pushed into some new directions. But at the time, it was not possible to do that with language, because the language generation was just too slow. It's only in 2013, 14 that language models started getting quick enough to generate text at the pace of conversation. And in 2015, a huge revolution started in those language models that were basically made available open source for people to experiment with. And in a space of a few months, a few projects appeared in 2016. A film that was written in 48 hours and shot in 48 hours called Sandspring. It was made by Ross Gorshin. Sorry, what did I say? Ross Goodwin. Oh my gosh, I'm looking for my references. And Oscar Sharp. Yes, so Oscar Sharp was the director, and Ross Goodwin was the writer who used the AI. And so they staged that. And it made absolutely no sense. Like, the stage directions in the film were like changing from frame to frame, and it was, yeah, but still the director and the actors played game, and they performed it. And then I saw in London in 2016 a play called Beyond the Fence, where lyrics were generated at 33% at most by a language model. Or sometimes the language model just generated some words, which then the writers incorporated into the work. And so what I found really exciting was that you had suddenly this technology made available to many people who started using it for challenge and inspiration. It didn't make sense, but it could generate sentences or even paragraphs that looked like human language. And we as humans used to perform absurd displays, used to give meaning to any piece of text, to anthropomorphize everything we see. We suddenly found a new toy. And that was the context in which I decided to do really to stage improv comedy on stage, generated by AI, with a human who responds to that and who is put in that situation of making it work, no matter what, no matter how nonsensical it is. The objective, my objective as an improviser, is to justify it and to find a reason, and a hidden reason, as if the AI-generated text was produced with a purpose, which of course it was not, and that was the game. So that's how the show looked like in early 2016 when I was preparing it. And you can see that the way I envisioned the show was to have a personification of AI, which was this little robot. It was a toy robot built by a Canadian company called Easy Robot. The robot is very cute, and it's also inexpensive, which is great because we can bring it to pubs, comedy pubs. And in order to interact with that AI, I was using speech recognition. So you can see that I'm wearing here this microphone by my face, and I'm speaking to this microphone. it is sending the signal straight to the laptop, and then it's being translated to text. And then the text is sent to the language model, which then, a few seconds later, finds a response, which I can hear via the loudspeaker. And as the sentence is generated, the robot also moves. So I coded everything up. I didn't build the robot itself, because that was built by this Canadian company, but I programmed the robot to react every time it's receiving some text. And I also built all the AI from scratch by myself. So it was a very much of a do-it-yourself project. And there was this aspect of doing a live tech demo in front of an audience. So you can imagine that everything can go wrong. Think of like the worst examples of this Microsoft Windows 95, 98 demos where the screen goes blue and then the presenter has to go, oops. Yeah, this was exactly the setup in which I was doing the show. And I had to make it work in the context of an improv show. Since then, everything has changed because the language models suddenly start making sense. You can argue that they still do not make sense if you read more than a few pages of their output, but they start making sense when they generate text. What changed is that a huge number of users across the world, hundreds of millions of people, have been using tools like ChatGPT or Bard, which are made available for free or for a relatively small amount for people to experiment and confront themselves with those language models, with those AIs. And you have the same for image generation. And so the changes that happened in the last 8 years are a mixture of making the tool available to everyone and increase the quality to the point where we could be fooled into thinking that it is human-generated.
This is amazing. And I love how in the improv field of theater, you think in terms of everything can go wrong and it's okay if everything go wrong. We just go with whatever happens.
Yes.
I feel like our biggest fear to a point in our performances was, okay, everything's gonna go wrong. What do we do? And we didn't have this ability, I guess, to turn it into a more of an improv show because we had a more structured way to do it. But I love how in the improv, you actually take it as an offering if things go wrong and you can turn it into something more interesting even. So that's definitely something we would apply to our future shows.
Yeah, I think the audience is on your side. That's the beauty of improv. They want you to succeed. They want you to make it work. And it's there's this kind of this fine line between walking this. Yeah, so improv is like a tightrope. And so if you add technology into the loop, into the mix, the tightrope becomes longer. But it's still a tightrope, and the audience is there cheering for you.
You know, I attended his improv show. I did some improv with UCB for a little bit. It's the thing with the tricky part too for improv. It's like real time, right? And we if you're the performer, the fuel is how the audience reacts. And his shows were like sold out. And it was so much fun. Sabrina and I were there. So what do you think are the pros, since you told us like maybe basically the pros of using AI in your world as an improviser in theater? What do you think are the cons, or are there cons at this moment in time?
So I'm going to show this other picture, and I really, here I absolutely need to show it because it's the other collaborator who has been making sure that this show happens and who had the same idea basically, and we started working together. So his name is, and he's coming on screen, Corey Matthewson. He was doing his PhD in robotics, University of Alberta in Edmonton, And he had been improvising with a rapid fire theater for a long time. And so he had the same idea as I had. And his motivation was specifically that good improvisers look good on stage, okay, but the best improvisers make the other person look good on stage. There is something selfless about improv, which is really to do the hard work of at the same time being in the moment and responding to the person in front of you and to the audience, but also in the back of your mind thinking of, okay, how can I make it work, and how can I direct my energy towards the other person so that they are reassured, they feel comfortable, and that everything they say has a meaning and a purpose and is justified. So he would do this show called 50 Minutes of Fame, where he would invite a random audience member who never did improv on stage. And I think the way he said he would proceed was, okay, everyone get up. Now, people who already did improv, sit down. Great. People who did acting in high school, sit down. Okay. People who have already been on stage, sit down. And at the end, there was one person standing, like the most shy, introverted person who has never been on stage. Okay. Do you want to come with me on stage? Great. And now I'm going to make you look like comedy gold. And so now imagine that this thing can be extended to a machine, an object, a shoe, a dog, a human, a living being. Okay. And so that was his motivation. So the first pro of working with technology is that it makes you work harder and it makes you become a better performer. Just because you have this extra thing to manipulate, and because it challenges you. Then, okay, so I mentioned that, yeah, we became friends, and so I mentioned Corey was my collaborator, and so we started doing shows together. And I need to say a few words about where it doesn't work. So we had this show in April 2017, where we were living on both sides of the Atlantic. So he was living in Canada, I was living in London, and he traveled to Portland, Oregon, to the Curious Comedy Theater to do a show with me remotely. So 8 hours of time difference over over Google Hangouts at the time, or Skype, with 2 live audiences in 2 theaters. And of course, with 8 hours of time difference. Well, so that's what we thought. Because there is a week in the year where the time differences are not aligned. We realized this a day before the show. Like, we realized that our shows were actually not happening at the same time. They were shifted by 1 hour. So what did we do? Well, I couldn't move my show, so he had to move his, and of course, he ended up having no audience because, yeah, it had to be moved. And also, he ended up having a wedding rehearsal in the middle of that slot. So he had to leave the stage halfway through in the show and go reconnect somewhere else. So like he did that from the toilet, literally. Sorry, in North America, you say the restroom. Anyway, so the good thing is that at least the camera was really like focused on his face. So we could see it at last we could see him very clearly. And also the robot literally crashed and burned. Smoke was coming out of his servos, and the audience on my side noticed it and said, and yeah, at that moment I felt I had lost the show. Also, the reviewer came that night, and they wrote, let me move a slide forward, 2 slides, 2 stars, chaotic, never work with robots. You know, because there's a saying in theater, never work with children, never work with animals. So Piotr and Corey have invented a new saying, never work with robots. Of course, we didn't abandon. It only motivated us even more to do even more of that. So we doubled down, and a few months later, we're in Edinburgh for an in-person show, the two of us on the same stage. And we just kept adding more and more technology into the mix, but also kept adding humans. And that's how we became a company of not only two people playing with robots and improvising together, but actually a whole cast of humans coming together. But yeah, technology brings, I mean, huge amounts of challenge and downsides. It drives your focus away from performance because you have to make it work. It's terrible. It's stressful. It's only when it works that you can feel good about yourself. So I don't know, Joyce, what show you saw back in Edinburgh last summer, if it was the one which was 2 stars, chaotic, never work with robots, or if it was a better version. But there has been a lot of iterations since then.
It seemed very flawless. It seems like it flew, the flow. There was a flow, and also I think it depends on the audience as well. The audience was so great when I went to see it. They were engaged in the show.
Yeah, this is interesting, and the critics' story is really funny. I know it's not cool to receive 2-star reviews, and that might be disappointing, but it's also the Edinburgh Fringe, and the critics have, their own specialty, and they might not know anything about your topic and what is behind it and how much work it is behind it. So possibly you took the bullet for our show, because our show was also involving technology and AI, and it seems like not everybody understood that. But what are some of the interesting thoughts you received from audience members, or maybe some of the interactions you saw between humans and the robot or the AI that you used?
One thing we do at the beginning of a show is that we actually use the robot to engage with the audience. It's a very strange thing, right? When you if you think about it. So the robot is on stage, and the audience walks in, and they take a seat, and the robot just keeps waving its hands and talking via the loudspeaker, and just addressing the audience, saying, "Hello, person with a green sweater, how are you doing?" Mm-hmm. And then at some point the audience member realizes, oh wait,
that's me.
That's me. And so they start actually engaging with this robot. So obviously that is a case of a Wizard of Oz. I am actually on stage with my laptop and controlling the robot and typing the questions for the robot to ask, because we don't have like a camera that records people in the audience and then make those kind of choices. But then after maybe one exchange, it's the language model, so the AI, that starts coming up with responses or new questions, and it's and people use effectively technology to get into the show and to trigger some form of response, memories, and stereotypes they associate with technology and with robots. And then as the show builds up, the show starts actually, and then the show builds up, or at least that's what we've been doing in Edinburgh, we directly lay over all the technology on stage, talking about deepfakes, talking about the copyright issues with language models and image generation models that are trained on billions of images and terabytes of text. And and how they become extremely good at generating those results, and how technology has progressed very quickly. And so there is this moment at the very beginning of a show where the audience will go through a phase of, woo, okay, where are we heading? And then the human casts walks on stage. And this establishes the fact that for us, it is a tool that, as I mentioned earlier, it's a tool that we're going to use to challenge ourselves and to try to do good improv. Thanks to or despite that tool.
Yeah, that's really cool. And we had some similar parts in our show where I was typing in some something to say to the audience, and just seeing the reaction, how they didn't expect that. They kind of had this image of the AI creating this dialogue or monologue, and then suddenly you call them by their name and say something personal. That's definitely an exciting moment, and I hope it will be possible in the future to have those types of communications, but between actual AI and humans. My next question is a bit more about the future of AI. I recently talked to my dad, and he is a chess player. He's a chess enthusiast, and we talked about AI, and he said, "Well, remember how I was, 20 years ago was playing chess, or maybe not even 20, but very long time ago." And he said we were playing as equals with the program that was the available chess simulation player. And now he said it's not even possible. It doesn't even make sense, or it doesn't. There's no point playing with the program because it's gonna outplay you. It's gonna win every time. So I'm wondering, how do you envision this collaboration between humans and machines, and humans and robots, humans and AI in the future? And what do you see as potential, beautiful part of it, and beauty of this collaboration, possibly some risks that we could, overcome?
Yeah, this is a very, very good question, because it says a lot, not only about AI, but actually also about ourselves as we build those tools and why we build them, but also the complexity of the human task. So chess used to be considered as the most complex task that can be done. And of course, chess players are just amazing thinkers. But chess is a game that was conceptualized by humans with a very rigid, defined set of rules. And the universe in which chess exists is limited by the number of positions on the board. It's countable, it's finite. Like even for the game of Go, which was this huge breakthrough in 2016, AlphaGo, on one hand, you can say that there are more positions, possible positions on the Go board than numbers in the universe, okay, than atoms in the universe. So it's not possible to explore all those positions by hand, but at the same time, it is still limited, because the Go board is 19 by 19 positions, and each can be either empty or black or white, nothing else. Now think of the world in which we evolve. I mean, it is infinite along many dimensions.
Yeah.
X, Y, Z, and time. And then we are dealing with complex living beings, animals, humans, who have their own universes inside them, and a whole complex range of emotions and motivations. It's just a different level of complexity. So we can build AI that can work very well in a very fixed and rigid universe defined by some rules and beat us at our own game. But at the same time, we know that we have built chess, we have conceptualized chess, and then we have built a machine that plays chess better. Okay, great. It's just a logical continuation of progress, of human progress and human ingenuity. But it doesn't mean that this scales, to use this very Silicon Valley term, up to the rest of our existence, of our experience. And then even if chess can beat, I mean, even if AI can beat us at chess, at the game of Go, it doesn't mean that we can't use the computer to become a better player. Because at the end of the day, you play for yourself. You play with your friend, with a family member, because you want to challenge yourself. Just like people run marathons. Every year there's a New York Marathon, there's one winner. Why is everyone else in the marathon? They know they are going to lose. But just by taking part in the marathon, they have already won because they have already challenged themselves to do something new. And they don't care if there is someone who runs faster than them. So I imagine that, yes, AI will get progressively better than humans at various human tasks. But we are also going to notice how much more difficult than we envisioned those tasks are. Even if you think about self-driving cars, we still don't have self-driving cars on roads. Maybe because we want to make them extra safe. But we just realized that driving on roads is much more complicated than we envisioned 10 years ago. So now take everything else. We tend to, especially when we talk about what other people do, we tend to trivialize human activity and underestimate how complex it is.
Yeah, this is super interesting, and I love the parallels with the marathon and other activities that we sometimes take for granted and don't appreciate it much over science or some, intellectual, I guess, competition between humans and machines. And so this is beautiful to get back to those human roots and think of what we have as maybe infinite possibilities as well.
I think 2 years ago, with Corey Matthewson, we worked together, we looked at the problem of generating very long text. Because at the time, language models, after a few paragraphs, started making no sense at all. And we thought, well, it would be interesting as an intellectual challenge to get a language model to generate something that has the length of a book and still makes sense. And so we thought about this, and maybe we realized that we could try to get it to generate screenplays or plays. Okay, I know that those words are going to trigger a lot of emotions, especially after the WGA strike of last year. But we were taking it first and foremost as an intellectual challenge of trying to build a system that does this. And we teamed up with a researcher who had worked on narrative video games. So where the video game is generating the story for the player. And also with another researcher, Jalen Pittman, who was looking at narratology, but also at the biases in language models, biases that are embedded in language. Embedded in the models that generate the language. And we also shifted our focus from having a system that generates a play from, say, a log line, to a system that interactively generates a play with the writers in the loop. And that was 2 years ago. So a lot of things happened since then. ChatGPT has been made available, and people have actually tried using it to generate screenplays or text, or to help them as a writing aid. And in the year before that release, we had done a study with writers, playwrights, directors, actors who were involved in improvisation and writing text. And we we showed them that system and we asked them feedback about how the process of interacting with a AI writing tool is. And they gave some very interesting feedback about the fact that, for instance, playwrights were much more resistant towards writing with such a AI system than screenwriters, because playwrights were used to working in a non-linear way, not in a hierarchical way, top-down, starting from logline to get a list of characters and then list of plot points, but rather do something bottom-up and assemble it. And then also they were used to working alone, as opposed to some writers for screenplays who may be working in a writer's room. So there was, first of all, there were some insights about how people from different industries in performing arts would actually approach such a writing tool. And the second interesting point that was made is that they didn't care about the output, in the sense that they wouldn't use it as in their work. Rather, they wanted to hear the machine voice for two reasons. The first one was to just very quickly ideate and get words on the page and get some ideas and then use it to think about something else and then find inspiration in their own work. Or maybe just get a vomit draft. Just get things out and then step back and get their own words out on paper. Now that the machine has done that very dirty, messy work of putting words on page. And I can imagine that not every writer would like that. So this is very people specific. But the second usage of this AI writing tool that some of the writers liked was to specifically get a slightly different perspective on an idea that they had. So to hear that robot voice, between brackets, and maybe not necessarily to get inspired from it, but just to see a different perspective on the work, which would again lead them in their creative process.
It's like it serves as a feedback for them to edit or something.
Yes, it can be used as a feedback.
Or it's also like when we do readings as playwrights to hear our dialogue being out there said by somebody else.
Yes. So one of the suggestions we had from the writers was to actually input their existing work on a purely consensual basis, because I mean, on a voluntary consensual basis, they put the existing work into the machine and they see what the machine comes up with in their own style. Yes. Or how it would continue that bit of work. And I would say that this is kind of the first motivation I had almost 20 years ago when I started, 18 years ago when I started doing my PhD. I had read about building AI systems that can complete the unfinished fugue by Bach, by Johann Sebastian Bach. Without any specific purpose, but just to see if there are some patterns, some regularities, some stereotypes in a specific writer style that can be exploited to generate text in that style. And again, this here we're going to hit the conversation about the consent and the purpose of doing that. So if the artist wants to hear themselves coming from a machine, it's a totally different situation than if someone else wants to impersonate or cannibalize their own work without their consent.
Just a short follow-up question. That's gonna be tricky, right? For the consent of work too, because it's like, yes, you as a human came up with the idea, but part of it was also made by a machine. It's not who totally did it.
Yeah, exactly.
And the laws have to change. But the funny thing is, I don't know now in Europe, but US law is still catching up. It's still not there.
Okay, I know 3 p.m. 3 p.m. the end of the hour for all of us, and we would want to talk more about AI and all things related, but we know you have to go, so we will hope to stay in touch and continue our conversation with some other platform.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. It was really delightful, and I'm so happy to have met you, Joyce, in August.
Yeah.
And I really loved your show, the exploration that you did, and the engagement with the audience. Yeah, specifically on this aspect of the memory.
We'll just come see you. Thank you, Piotr.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Piotr.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Natalia. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.